Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Rock the Cradle. Today, we have the great privilege of having with us Dr. Hassan Ahmadian. He is an associate professor of West Asian Studies at the University of Tehran and has recently been catapulted into the limelight with his regular appearances on an Al Jazeera Arabic program. The Arab world is calling him their Dr. Mohammad Marandi. They call you an Iranian missile in the heart of the Persian Gulf. Their program ratings have soared, and Arabs are watching as an unflustered and unflinching Iranian academic takes on 7 other Arab experts on a regular basis, delivering facts and sound bites at hypersonic speed. I've been hearing about you, Hassan, because we don't hear from you in English very much. Through a lot of Arabic-speaking friends of mine. And in 6 weeks, you've become essential viewing for much of the Arab world, and the Egyptians have fallen in love with you. It's a crazy time. Just to let our English viewers get an idea of the kind of dynamic that happens on the show, we're going to put a clip on, a very short clip, that will give an example of how you spit facts.
القانون الدولي يتيح لهما في أزمنة الحرب أن تديران العملية.
أي مادة؟ أي مادة؟
المادة 14 من ميثاق جامايكا، راجعها على التليفون ثم قاطعني.
I mean, you've seen these clips go around. I'm sure you're a modest guy, but this is insane. We've never had an experience like this. What is it like sitting around the same people day in, day out, listening to these narratives about Iranian expansionism and aggression from people who've opened their entire countries to not just the U.S. military, but also to Israel's hegemonic aspirations?
Thank you, Sharmeen. It's good to be with you. Thanks for your introduction. I'm really humbled by what you said about people, talking about what I did and what my appearances on Al Jazeera. Well, the setting in and of itself was quite revealing. There are clear, narratives that are being circled around in Arab, but also Western media about Iran. Now, I think they were expecting a panicking Iranian on the show, faced with many narratives that, they don't see that panic. They see a very strong narrative coming out of Iran, I think, and it's not only mine. I think it's clear to everybody, ordinary people, who's the aggressor and who's the party that was attacked. So I was just, talking about this, the realities on the ground, that bases were used against Iran. And it has been really a very new experience to me, because many ordinary people would talk to me in hotel, outside, would tell me, we agree with you. These bases were used. We know that they were used, but still you hear the other narrative on the TV saying, no, Iran is aggressor, is attacking unprovokedly the Arab countries, despite the official line in Iran, with a clear distinction between U.S. bases and assets and those relations that Iran has with Arab countries being important to Tehran. So I think, the mere reality of the narrative being very much connected to what transpired the past, 1.5 months, has gave this narrative more acceptance within the streets and those who basically pay attention to news.
Well, because for the first time, they're hearing the other narrative presented in a very sane and coherent way. You've also been praised highly for remaining calm under pressure. And one of my favorite clips of you, Hassan, is two of the other Arab guests arguing with each other while you're in the middle and you're just watching like a tennis match, So you've been highly praised for that. One of the things, I have watched a few clips from the show in the last few days. I've seen them challenge you to provide proof that their countries have allowed U.S. Israeli attacks using their land, airspace, or sea. they deny it. They flat out deny it and then ask you for proof. We're just going to show you another clip in case you haven't seen this, which sounds like proof enough.
And I want to thank, as the Secretary did, our Gulf partners who fought alongside each and every one of us every day. From the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, and Jordan, all who joined us together to defend and protect our people and our assets.
I mean, that's the U.S. military's chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And how do Arab states of the Persian Gulf keep denying their involvement in light of such adamant U.S. declarations? And why does their U.S. ally continue to throw them under the bus in this way when they're clearly trying to hide their collusion? Is it deliberate?
I think the Americans didn't pay attention to their, GCC partners and also Jordan. They didn't pay attention to their, preferences starting this war of aggression. They didn't pay attention to them during the war. They did what they wanted to do, no matter what their GCC friends were telling them. And then they got into a ceasefire without consulting GCC countries. To my understanding, that's a patron-client relations, a proxy. They're looking at them as proxies. And as such, you deal with proxies the way you want. It doesn't matter what they say, doesn't matter if you're saying something that contradicts their narrative. And it doesn't matter to the United States eventually if they oppose or really are on board of usage of the bases on their territories. It's America, it's the U.S., call, and they have to get in line. That's what I get out of this narrative the Americans are putting out. But to listen to Americans, the U.S. president himself named these countries 3 times that I followed, maybe more I didn't see. And I'm yet to hear a single, denial by an official, a high-ranking official, that the president is lying. Or General Kane that you just, played the video of. Who's the chiefs of staff, is the man managing the war on the other side. He's saying it clearly, and he's a serious person, not like Pete Hegseth. He usually focuses on facts on the ground, though, of course, in line with the U.S. president's lines. He's naming these countries, and yet we don't hear any denial. So there's no point really in denying this. But, the mere fact that people come on the show and in different places to only deny, no, we didn't. That defies the logic of the military operation itself, because there were 2 wars waged on Iran, one from Israel and another from the CENTCOM enterprise. The CENTCOM enterprise, the headquarters is in Tampa, Florida. But the infrastructure is in the southern countries to Iran, that is the GCC countries. Now, to say that we have nothing to do with it, it doesn't rhyme with reality. We don't have to do anything with it, but wherever an Iranian missile or a drone would hit these bases, Americans would get injured or killed, or refueling planes would burn on the ground. Fighter jets would be shot down incidentally because they thought they were Iranian fighter jets. So, facts on the ground show a totally different picture than the claim that we hear in the region. But unfortunately, it seems that they don't have any other narrative to base their arguments on.
Before we come back to the Gulf, I just want to bring you up to, the conversation, what's happening today, because in the span of one day, the Strait of Hormuz was declared open to all commercial traffic within the scope of Iranian administration of the waterway. Then this morning, Tehran declared it closed again. And we've heard reportedly 2 vessels have come under fire, and the Wall Street Journal, take it with a pinch of salt if you want, says about 20 vessels have turned around. What happened overnight and why?
Well, I think what happened is that the Iranians just announced that in line with the Supreme National Security Council, any ship other than military ones, military vessels, can cross the Strait of Hormuz. That is something that is not new, but the mere fact that President Trump took it and started calling victory and saying that Iran capitulated, made the Iranians or forced the Iranians to come and clear the image that nothing changed. There is an announcement by the Supreme National Security Council in Tehran after the ceasefire that is being observed, that roads are to be observed by Iran's Navy, and no, ships can cross but with the coordination or prior coordination with Iran. And that statement also says that, military and non-commercial vessels cannot cross. And so we have nothing new. Maybe last night what was announced was that Iran said, okay, after the ceasefire in Lebanon, the U.S. also, its commercial ships can cross. And now with the President Trump announcement that the siege will stay in place, the Iranians are saying, no, then you can't cross again. So that's the main change, and the Iranians reacted to what the U.S. announced of the remaining of the siege, which is, problematic in and of itself, to what extent the U.S. can really pull this off as it claims to. But in any case, I think that was what happened, and we didn't see really that much of change on the ground. It's business as usual. But some tankers and some commercial ships, hearing the news, started moving towards the strait. The Iranians told them, no, it's business as usual. There is a line that you have to coordinate with us to cross from. And that's because the Iranians, in accordance with international law, are saying we are under attack by two adversaries that might use the Strait of Hormuz. And so we can't allow for military and other vessels cross without us observing what they are carrying. And second, until and unless there's a deal between Iran and the United States that guarantees there won't be war, which is hard to achieve, I think the Iranians will keep managing shipments through the Strait of Hormuz.
I agree with you. It doesn't seem altogether clear. I mean, the Iranian deputy foreign minister or spokesman, Saeed Khatibzadeh, has addressed the Americans this morning saying, if you're going to violate the terms of the ceasefire and if you do not respect your promises, there will be consequences for you. Now, people are speculating that the violation of the ceasefire was the non-removal of the U.S. siege, right? But I'm perplexed because obviously the Pakistanis are the intermediaries. Whatever's agreed upon is surely outlined in detail. And does Trump even know those details? He may just be talking. I mean, do you think the Iranians visually confirm that the siege has not been removed? Because I don't think Trump's words really hold much in all of this. He's going to continue to say, nonsense to his domestic audiences.
Well, that's really doesn't matter that much to Iran. What matters is what transpired on the ground.
Yeah.
I think from day 2 of the war, President Trump has been yearning, trying to get an achievement and showcase that he won the war. And he is denied time and time again. Now, from, collapsing the system and Iran altogether and bringing it down, occupying its oil fields and managing them on the behest of U.S. companies. President Trump is now basically, in essence, begging the Iranians to go back to where the war started. Open the strait and let us do business as usual. The Iranians are telling him, no, you imposed a war. Between the lines, that's the position. You imposed a war. You have to pay. You can't just, impose a war and attack our infrastructure and then, live with it without any repercussions. So they're demanding, sanctions relief, and their main guarantee is not international law. International law never stopped aggression on Iran. 9 months ago, the country was attacked despite UN Security Council position. More than a month ago, the country was attacked despite UN Security Council position, the UN Security Council position. And now there's no international law-based solution to stop the US. What is the guarantee? I think the main guarantee is the Strait of Hormuz as the Iranians are viewing it. If you are to impose a war, there will be an economic and energy war on you. If you impose death and destruction on our nation, there will be economic pressure on your nation as well. And so there's an asymmetry. Of course, it's very much different from conventional warfare, but it's still the same. Now, President Trump is preoccupied with prices of energy. From the get-go, after the ceasefire, basically he has been trying to keep markets calm and bring oil prices down because that gives him leverage. Whereas the Iranians have been trying to tell him, no, you can't do that without a deal that can remedy what you did in attacking Iran. And so the ceasefire was very clear in that there will be a regional ceasefire. They broke the Lebanon part of it. There will be unfreezing of assets. They didn't do that. And thirdly, Iran would basically manage the Strait of Hormuz and the Americans can use it. That was the essence of the agreement, which is quite telling where the war went. There is no achievement for President Trump to impose his preconditions on Iran. And now, with the ceasefire being broken by the United States, the Iranians also are telling him, if you want to play this the way you are doing, we can play it along. And so I think there is nothing agreed on. He spoke about Iran's nuclear program, Iran giving up its nuclear material, Iran agreeing to open the Strait of Hormuz, Iran agreeing to this and that. And we hear from many Iranian officials that is nothing not related to reality. He is basically piling these lies in his parallel world. There's nothing happening in the way that he described. And there is no deal because the nuclear program was supposed to be discussed on the table. We are in the ceasefire phase. There's nothing agreed on the table. And so you can't really rely on Trump at this point. You have to take anything he said with a big load of salt.
I almost feel like the Iranians are going to give Washington a lesson on how to conduct negotiations. You can't just skip the parts you don't want. You can't just cherry pick the essence of a deal or an agreement, whether it's been signed or verbally agreed upon. Tell us, though, Hassan, your reading of the situation within the 6 members of the GCC. There has appeared to be a split for a good number of weeks in opinion within the GCC on how to move forward with or without the U.S. to communicate with Iran or to incite against Iran. And the way we've seen it at the Cradle has basically been the Omanis, on one clear side, dealing with the Iranians openly and saying absolutely they would not allow any U.S. military activities from their soil, followed by Qatar, who took a hands-off position on this conflict. And then you have Kuwait and Bahrain, and then, of course, the UAE inciting for more American strikes on Iran. And then largely, other than for domestic consumption, the Saudis being quiet and maybe sitting on the fence to see the direction. Everyone has their own calculations, both domestic and foreign policy, for their stances. Would you say this is an accurate description, or is it just a facade?
I agree with you. I think the most hawkish stance we hear are from UAE mainly, and then Bahrain against Iran. they have been, and there's no surprise in that they are the countries that